Viewer discretion is advised.
The San Francisco 49ers. The Niners did trade for an over-the-hill, pre-canceled O.J. Simpson, but nothing can be worse than once again trading up for a QB. In 2021, the Niners gave a king's ransom to the Dolphins to move up 9 spots and draft Trey Lance. The return for the Dolphins was 3 firsts and a third. Lance was never productive in Santa Clara and was traded to the Cowboys for a 4th round pick after hitting the script club. The Dolphins got Jalen Waddle at 6 and used the picks to acquire Tyreek Hill and Bradley Chubb. Still, somehow the Niners ended up not being fucked when they lucked out on Lozman Trophy winner Brock Purdy, whose last name means "man, my sister's hot" in West Virginia. Super Bowl 54, Chiefs versus 49ers 2020. Okay, Kyle Shanahan, you collapse more than tech firms with long-haired hip CEOs. Shanahan, whose play calling as an OC led to the Falcons blowing a 25-point lead, found himself up 10 points late over the Chiefs in Super Bowl 54. To be fair, Shanahan, now a head coach, that 10-point lead didn't really last long as the Chiefs answered Raheem Mostert's TD in their next possession with a TD by Taylor Swift's boyfriend. Then after a 3-and-out, the Chiefs scored again, turning a 10-point deficit into a 4-point lead in the span of 4 minutes in a collapse not seen since 2016. The Niners looked awful in the 4th quarter on both sides of the ball, and they got outscored 21-0 and ultimately lost by a final of 31-20. Kyle Shanahan would regroup his squad and make it back to Super Bowl 58, where they also blew a 10-point second quarter lead, eventually losing in overtime. Jeez, Kyle, you blow more leads than an episode of Property Sex. San Francisco 49ers, Scott McCloughan. Before John Lynch, there was Scott McCloughan, who was in name the GM, but really was more of a puppet for Jed York. From 2005 to 2009, he oversaw the Niners to a 31-49 record. However, more questionable than his moves, unfortunately, was his drinking, which ultimately led to his firing/mutual separation with the team. Set to host Super Bowl 60, I cannot believe there will have been 60 of these things and the Browns or the Lions haven't sniffed one. Just one fucking Super Bowl, please. Anyways, Levi Stadium certainly has an interesting configuration, as like the Super Bowls in the 90s, it's lopsided. That is so the rich people can sit on one side in their luxury boxes and the poors can be on the other side. I hear it's not a bad stadium. San Francisco 49ers. Most scandals involve a fine. This one cost someone his team. Eddie DeBartolo as an owner is a legend. As a businessman, well, a little shady. Bartolo got caught in 1999 when he bribed the former governor of the state $400K for a riverboat casino license, or as they call it, doing business in Louisiana. He was suspended 1 year, but then forced to sell the team to his sister, who ceded the team to her then 29-year-old son, Jed York, who has gotten better as an owner, but was a petulant idiot back then. His strategy is just to let that John Lynch guy do all his moves. DeBartolo was still inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2016. 1981, San Francisco 49ers. You've heard of the 49ers' decade of dominance, but did you know there was a decade of disaster right before it? You know the players. Joe Montana, Dwight Clark, Ronnie Lott, Roger Craig, I could go on. From 1978 to 1980, the 3 years before the Super Bowl, the 49ers were 10-38. Oh, but they didn't have Bill Walsh. No, he was the coach. The team went 2-14 in the legendary strategist's first year. And give credit to the 49ers for not pulling a Browns or a Panthers and trusting that their coach knew what he was fucking doing. All is forgotten when the Lombardi is raised. One of the most memorable catches in NFL history, known simply as the catch, as the late Dwight Clark skied for a grab in the end zone and helped the team beat the Cowboys in the conference championship game. We all remember that. The West Coast offense helped totally transform NFL offenses, and this 49ers team was the start of it all. They went on to win 4 Super Bowls, and even changing of the guard when Steve Young took over for Joe Montana and George Seifert took over for Walsh. See West. San Francisco 49ers, Mike Singletary's rant in 2008. That year, the 49ers hit rock bottom during head coach Mike Singletary's famous post-game rant after a 34-13 loss to the Seahawks. Singletary publicly chastised tight end Vernon Davis, declaring he couldn't win with selfish players.
I will not tolerate players that think it's about them when it's about the team, cannot play with them, cannot win with them, cannot coach with them, can't do it.
Singletary was wild, by the way. This outburst exposed the deep dysfunction within the team. The Niners have always been able to bounce back from lows, like trading up for Trey Lance, but the Mike Singletary era was a new one. San Francisco 49ers. Yes, blowing 10-point leads in the Super Bowl sucks twice, but the Niners losing their owner Ed DeBartolo to scandal has probably set them back further than you think. Yes, Jed York has gotten better, but you get the feeling that if old Ed had been running the show all these years, these close losses would have turned into wins. San Francisco 49ers 2004. The 2004 49ers finished 2-14, marking a sharp decline for a franchise that had once been synonymous with success. Ownership issues and poor management decisions had left their roster depleted, and retread Dennis Erickson was less effective than a vasectomy on Antonio Rogers Cromartie. Tim Rattay was the starting QB. Also shot out to the lone Chip Kelly season in 2016, which also produced 2 measly wins before he got fired. Tomasula, San Francisco 49ers. This was just another bizarre hire, as the 49ers were reeling from Jim Harbaugh and his khakis fleeing for Michigan in 2015 after appearing in 3 of the last 4 NFC Championship games and had a Super Bowl appearance. What's insane is Jim Tomasula was the last head coach as an interim before Jim, and then was hired to fill the void. That one game of experience must have left a lasting impression, because he had only been a head coach in the European League prior and was the defensive line coach for the Niners at the time he was hired. So many jokes were told about his appearance when he took over, and he looked so out of place on the sideline. Here are a few jokes. Jim Tomasulo is currently thinking about the barbecue later. Jim Tomasulo is the Miller High Life of Champagne. Jim Tomasulo took Cap out to dinner. Just you and me, buddy, and then went to Safeway and ate soup. Jim Tomasulo's ideal vacation is a trip to the water park. Jim Tomasulo's wife knows to always pick up extra sausages from the store. Jim Tomasulo's favorite movie is Weekend at Bernie's. Jim Tomasula sleeps with a pillow under his gun. The team finished 5-11. He was fired, and they followed him up with Chip fucking Kelly.
San Francisco 49ers, Trey Lance. It's ironic to me that the 49ers had possibly the worst NFL draft trade of all time in 2021 when they selected Trey Lance 3rd overall. They moved up for him to be their future franchise quarterback. What did they pay to get him? Well, they paid a 1st-round pick in 2021, 12th overall, a 2022 1st-round pick, a 2022 3rd-round pick, and a 2023 1st-round pick, all just to get to the 3rd spot. And what did they get out of Lance? They got 4 starts, 102 pass attempts, 797 yards, 5 touchdowns. He was eventually traded to the Dallas Cowboys for a 4th-round pick, where he currently sits as Dak Prescott's backup. And despite this, the 49ers have been immensely successful despite this horrifically awful trade, all because they lucked out by finding Brock Purdy late in the 2022 draft. So the Trey Lance blow wasn't as bad as it probably should have been, and would have been 99% of the time. But still, he remains an unknown. He only had really 1 year of college football at North Dakota State, which is FCS, and now he hasn't even thrown 150 passes in the league. Will he be the guy to replace Dak Prescott if the Cowboys fail again this year? Who knows? But as of right now, his career at the 49ers has to be considered nothing but a massive historical disappointment, and that's the way it's always going to. San Francisco 49ers, Kyle Shanahan. In the last 5 years, the 49ers have been to 2 Super Bowls and 4 NFC Championship games. They have one of the best rosters in the league, and Shanahan is well regarded as one of the best minds in the league. So yeah, the guy's hot seat ranking 0.5 out of 5, although it is kind of hilarious how his teams keep blowing big leads in the Super Bowl. San Francisco 49ers, Brock Purdy. I think a lot of the discourse around Purdy is kind of weird. He's a guy, he wins a lot of games, puts up great stats. I don't understand what the problem is here. Now, I understand that he's in a great situation. He's on a loaded offense. There's no question about that. He's a good quarterback in a good situation, and that's why the 49ers are so fucking good. People talk about how Tua Tagovailoa is holding the Dolphins back from being an elite team. Well, I don't think Brock Purdy is holding the 49ers 49ers back from being an elite team. In fact, if anything, I think Brock Purdy is actually the biggest reason why the 49ers aren't an afterthought after they had the historically terrible trade for Trey Lance in 2021, where they like literally one of the worst trades in the history of sports, and they got bailed out by finding Brock Purdy and Mr. Irrelevant. So he saved the 49ers from their consequences of the Trey Lance trade. And even in the Super Bowl, which some people criticize him for, he led 3 go-ahead drives in the fourth quarter and overtime of the Super Bowl. Now, some people say, well, he should have gotten a touchdown, but still, 3 times gave the 49ers defense a chance to close the game and seal the championship, and they couldn't get it done. So in my opinion, he's legit. This is not a Jimmy Garoppolo situation. His prover rating, though, still at an 8 out of 10, but I think he's legitimately. San Francisco 49ers, Deebo Samuel. Look at this fucking fat ass Deebo Samuel. Yeah, he had that 1 year a couple years ago, 2021. Again, that kind of seems like a recurring theme through this video. He was one of the better receivers in the league, and then for some reason, it just seems like Kyle Shanahan decided to stop using him as a pure receiver and kind of made him into thick version of Tavon Austin, basically. I mean, you look at the numbers, he averaged 88 yards a game in 2021 receiving, and in each of the last 2 years, he hasn't broken 60 yards per game. So I don't know why they have so many weapons. Obviously, if he was on a worse team, he probably would get more targets than he does. But he still, again, is very good player, but he's not. People say, oh, he's one of the best players in the league. I don't think he gets the amount of volume. He doesn't produce the amount of volume I believe that he should. And I don't know. It just that 2021 season just kind of sticks out like a sore thumb to me, where it was like that was just a massive tease, I guess, where he looked like he could be one of the better receivers in the league, but now he's just kind of used as a gadget player, which is kind of sad. San Francisco 49ers, Steve DeBerg, 1978. The year before Bill Walsh and Joe Montana arrived in town, Steve DeBerg was starting quarterback as a rookie, and he was not good. It's not hard to understand why the 49ers were so bad, because their quarterback was dog shit. He completed 45% of his passes, had 4.2 yards per attempt. He had 8 touchdowns to 22 interceptions, and had a 40 passer rating. And he also had this fucking weird contraption that he was wearing underneath him. It was like the original radio speaker into your headset for a quarterback that he and Bill Walsh used. It just was a mess. Although on the bright side, again, O.J. Simpson was his teammate on that 1978 49ers team, so I'm sure that DeBerg learned a lot of valuable life lessons from good old Orenthal James Simpson.
What do you do with the team that can't win the big one? What do you do with the man that can't escape his own demons? What do you do with San Francisco? They were the chosen ones, crowned as the contender of the NFC for what seems to be time eternal, only to fumble it away at every opportunity, either coming up just short of the goal or being decapitated by a wave of injuries. Simplest explanation, the Niners are perennially cursed. All you need is one example. Dre Greenlaw, one of their core defensive players, suffers a major injury early on. And it's not during a play, but by going onto the field after a punt. Shades of Bill Gramatica injuring himself after a kick. That is San Francisco. Undone by elements out of their control or an ill-timed faux pas. They can have no joy. They can't even hold the record for longest field goal in Super Bowl history without Kansas City one-upping them. Whatever they try to do, Kansas City is simply better. And this was supposed to be the year to beat them. They looked weak throughout the season. Their underbelly was exposed. Their offense was a complete mess, being bailed out by defense and their opponents imploding on themselves. Yet San Francisco couldn't do it. Travis Kelce was yelling at Andy Reid in the sidelines, and they still couldn't do it. They're Buffalo with better PR, consistently botching key opportunities thanks to an inability to overcome the Chiefs' defense. Most agonizingly, the few mistakes they made were brutal in scope, undone by a blocked extra point and a muffed punt. Their special teams doomed them. Thanks to those 2 plays, everything will be overthought and analyzed to hell and back due to the football equivalent of Deus Ex Machina. Can't even call Kyle Shanahan a choker. He didn't even do that much wrong. His only true demerits on the game were failing to run the ball in the third quarter and gunning for a third possession in overtime. Hate to say, Kyle, but Kansas City was going to go for 2 instead of obliging him. Point to him blowing another double-digit lead in the Super Bowl, but all it shows me is one thing. He still cannot break the hex of 28-3. No matter what he does or how he schemes, that dark cloud will never dissipate. It is his albatross. It has become San Francisco's bane, despair, perpetual agony. As Kansas City rips the wind from their cold, dead hands, the football world is a chasm. The dynasty of the Chiefs has been born. The new boss is the same as the old boss, but now with allegations of rigging and scripting because the bad guys won in predictable fashion. We are now under new management. San Francisco has failed to break through once again. While they should have one more year to push until the Purdy bill comes due, everyone's somehow going to get injured again and they'll fall well short of the goal. That's just how things work for them. Bang, bang, Niner gang. The bang is them falling to their death. Reaching the pearly gates, there will only be the worst-case scenario for football fans. 2 rings for Kadarius Toney.
San Francisco is gone now. That was for the good of all Americans.